The nanny was fired unfairly. Then the millionaire's daughter cried, "Daddy, she's my family!" The Moreau estate was one of the largest residences on the west side of the city. Its towering iron gates, perfectly manicured gardens, and gleaming marble corridors all radiated wealth and authority. Yet behind that polished facade, the house felt strangely cold, as if the air within had long since frozen in time. Victor Moreau was the man who had built everything from nothing. At 32, he was one of the city's youngest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs. Victor worked relentlessly, signing multi-million-dollar contracts and making decisions in minutes that could determine the fate of entire developments. In business circles, he was respected. To his employees, he was a strict, unpredictable boss who rarely smiled. But when he returned home, Victor was simply an exhausted man. 2 years earlier, his wife Emily had died in a car accident while returning from a business trip. Heavy rain, poor visibility, and everything ended far too quickly. Victor was not there. He was in another city, attending a meeting he had once believed could not be canceled. When the call came, Victor stood frozen in the middle of a crowded conference room. He heard the voice on the other end of the line, yet no other sound seemed to exist. His world collapsed in silence. After the funeral, Victor did not cry. He did not allow himself to grieve in the usual way. Instead, he buried himself in work, as though staying busy enough might keep the pain from catching up to him. He worked 16 hours a day, flew constantly between cities, and packed his schedule so tightly that there was no space left to think. But no matter how far Victor tried to run, there was one person he could not escape: Lily Moreau. Lily was only 5 when she lost her mother. At an age when a child needs gentle arms and a sense of safety the most, she suddenly lost the most important woman in her life. She became quieter, spoke less, and often startled when strangers appeared in the house. The nannies before her came and went. Some could not endure Lily's silence. Some found the work too demanding. Others simply failed to form a bond. Each time someone left, Lily withdrew a little more, as though learning not to place her trust in anyone again. Victor saw it. He knew his daughter was hurting, but he himself was trapped in his own grief. Each time Lily asked about her mother, Victor felt as though something were twisting deep inside his chest. Instead of facing it, he chose to avoid it, leaving most of Lily's care to others. The Moreau estate therefore remained frighteningly quiet. Meals passed in silence. The vast corridors echoed with solitary footsteps. Lily's bedroom was full of toys, yet laughter was rarely heard. There were nights when Victor stood outside his daughter's room, his hand resting on the doorknob, yet he lacked the courage to open it. He was afraid of Lily's sad eyes, afraid of questions he had no answers for, afraid to admit how deeply alone he had allowed his daughter to become since Emily's death. When Victor posted an advertisement for a new nanny, he did not expect much. He only wanted someone responsible enough, patient enough, someone who would stay long enough that Lily would not have to say goodbye once more. He did not know that this decision was about to bring a young woman into his life, someone who would not only care for Lily, but would also slowly begin to touch the thick walls he had built around his heart over the past 2 years. And her name was Elena Costa. Elena Costa was not someone accustomed to being fully loved. From an early age, life had taught her that beautiful things were fragile, and that anyone could leave without warning. Elena was born in a poor rural area, where small houses were scattered across barren fields and red dirt roads. Her childhood was not wealthy, but it was warm. Her parents were simple, hard-working people who believed that as long as one lived honestly and diligently, life would not betray them. Elena once believed that too, until she turned 18. The accident happened on a stormy evening. The car carrying her parents skidded on the slick road, crashed violently, and took both of their lives in a matter of seconds. When Elena was called to the hospital, all that remained were two cold bodies and a void that nothing could ever fill. From that moment on, Elena officially stepped into life alone. With no close relatives able to take her in, Elena packed a few sets of clothes, carried her memories and unhealed grief, and moved to the city with a vague hope that she might be able to stand on her own 2 feet. The years that followed became a long struggle for survival. Elena took on every kind of job: waitressing, retail work, cleaning, elderly care, and assisting in sweltering kitchens. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. She never cheated, never slacked off. Yet it seemed that honesty was not enough to keep her anywhere for very long. Short-term contracts, unstable wages, promises that were never fulfilled. Elena moved constantly, from one damp rented room to another cramped corner of a house. There were months when she counted every last coin to buy instant noodles, telling herself to hold on just a little longer, that things would get better. But that little longer stretched on for many years. Until one late evening, as Elena scrolled through job listings on her old phone, her weary eyes suddenly stopped on a single line. Live-in nanny needed, Moreau estate, high salary, room and board provided. Elena stared at the screen for a long time. A nanny? She had never imagined herself in such a role. Yet something in that notice made her heart tighten slightly. Perhaps it was the word stable. Perhaps it was the idea of no longer worrying about rent each month. Or perhaps, deep down, Elena longed to care for someone, to belong somewhere, even if only temporarily. She hesitated. A mansion, a wealthy family, a world completely foreign to her. Elena knew well the judging looks and the invisible distances between servants and employers. She had tasted that kind of condescension many times before. But then she thought of her empty wallet, the rent deadline approaching, and the exhaustion of having to start again from nothing one more time. She took a deep breath and pressed the submit button. The morning Elena Costa arrived at the Moreau estate, the sky was clear, but her heart felt heavy. The bus stopped in front of the wealthy residential district where everything looked foreign to her. Spotless roads, perfectly aligned rows of trees, and iron gates taller than any she had ever seen. She stepped off the bus, adjusted the blouse she had carefully ironed the night before, and unconsciously tightened her grip on her old canvas bag. Elena stood before the gates of the Moreau mansion for a few seconds and took a deep breath. Calm down. It's just an interview. The butler led her inside. The moment she crossed the grand doors, Elena felt a chill spread through the space. The ceilings were high, the corridors long, everything was vast, yet lacking warmth. There was no laughter, no scent of food, only a perfectly preserved silence. Victor Moreau was seated in the living room. He wore a dark shirt, holding a folder in his hand, his gray-blue eyes cold and sharp. When Elena entered, he merely lifted his head for a moment before lowering it again to continue reading, as if her presence were just another minor detail in his crowded schedule. "Elena Costa?" Victor asked, his voice low and even. "Yes, sir," Elena replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Victor set the folder aside and looked her up and down, not rudely, but with the cool, assessing gaze of someone accustomed to making swift decisions. "I need someone who can stay long-term," he said, "not just for a few weeks or a few months." Elena swallowed. "I understand." "My daughter is 5, Victor continued. "She lost her mother. I don't need anyone overly sweet, only someone responsible, patient, and who won't leave halfway through." The final words were spoken slowly, yet Elena could feel the fear of abandonment hidden beneath that firm tone. "I won't promise what I can't do," Elena said after a brief pause. "But if I'm hired, I will care for Lily as if she were my own family." Victor studied her for a few more seconds. For the first time, his eyes were not entirely emotionless. "You start on Monday," he said. Elena could hardly believe her ears. She nodded repeatedly, her heart pounding. This was not just a job, it was a lifeline. On her first day of work, Elena woke up very early. She was taken to meet Lily in the back garden. The little girl sat on a swing with her back to them, her legs moving gently, while her gaze remained distant. "Lily," the butler called softly, "this is Elena." Lily turned around. Clear blue eyes studied Elena carefully. No smile, no words, only quiet observation. Elena knelt down, bringing her eyes level with the child's. "Hello," Elena said gently. "My name is Elena." Lily did not reply. After a moment she finally spoke, her voice very soft, as though speaking too loudly might shatter everything. Will you stay?" The question tightened Elena's chest. She understood that to Lily, every adult who appeared came with the risk of disappearing. Elena did not answer immediately. She did not want to lie. "If you allow me," Elena said slowly, "I would like to stay and take care of you." Lily looked at her for a long time. Then she turned away, saying nothing more. But as Elena stood up to leave, she felt a small hand gently tug at the hem of her blouse. Just a very light touch, but to Elena it felt like permission. From a distance, Victor stood by the second-floor window, silently watching everything. He did not know why, but in that moment, for the first time in many years, he felt that within this vast house, something was beginning to change. Elena did not rush into Lily's world. She understood that for a child who had grown used to adults coming and going, haste would only deepen the fear of abandonment. Therefore, during her first days at the Moreau estate, Elena chose to stay quietly by Lily's side. In the mornings, she woke up early to prepare breakfast. She did not force Lily to eat much. She simply placed the plate in front of her, sat down across from her, and ate alongside her. Some meals, Lily only touched her spoon a few times and then stopped. Elena did not urge her, only smiled gently and said, "That's okay. You can eat more when you feel hungry." After school, Elena picked Lily up and drove her home. In the car, Lily often sat silently, gazing out the window. Elena did not bombard her with questions. She only occasionally shared small, harmless stories about a cat she once had, about a bakery near the school, about how the sky was a little bluer today than yesterday. At first, Lily did not respond, but Elena noticed that the little girl no longer covered her ears or frowned as she used to. Sometimes, Lily tilted her head slightly, listening. In the afternoons, Elena took Lily into the garden. They did not play loud games. They simply worked on puzzles on the grass, watered plants, or sat beside each other drawing. Lily drew many houses with large windows, chimney smoke rising, and a sun always placed in the top corner of each picture. Elena did not ask why. She simply hung those drawings on Lily's bedroom wall, as though they were the most important artworks in the house. Evenings became Lily's favorite time. Elena read stories to her before bed. Not long tales, just familiar fairy stories. But Elena changed her voice for each character, a deep voice for the bear, a high voice for the fairy, and a playful tone for the clumsy dragon. One night, Elena heard a soft giggle. She paused and looked down. Lily was laughing, not a shy smile, but a real, clear, unexpected laugh, as though she herself could not believe she had just laughed. Elena felt her throat tighten. She continued reading, her voice trembling slightly, but her heart filled with a warmth she had not felt in a very long time. From that moment, Lily began to change. She spoke a little more. She began telling Elena about school, about other children, about strange dreams where her mother appeared, and then vanished. In those moments, Elena only listened. She did not interrupt, nor did she try to fix that sadness. One evening, as Elena stood up to leave the room, Lily suddenly reached out and held her hand. "Elena," Lily asked softly. "Yes?" If I fall asleep, will you come back tomorrow?" The question made Elena stand still for a few seconds. She sat down beside the bed and took Lily's small hand in hers. "If nothing unexpected happens," Elena said gently, "then I will still be here tomorrow." Lily studied her intently, as if trying to memorize every detail of Elena's face. Then she nodded. That night, Lily slept more peacefully. Elena sat by the bed for a long time, listening to her steady breathing, a powerful and unfamiliar sense of protectiveness rising in her heart. From the hallway, Victor Moreau observed everything. He saw Lily smile. He saw his daughter running into the garden, her hair flying. He saw colorful drawings appearing on the walls. The house was no longer frighteningly silent. Victor said nothing. But for the first time in 2 years, when he walked into the mansion, he no longer felt as though he were returning to an empty place. And he knew, though he was not yet ready to admit it, that Ellen Acosta was slowly touching his daughter's heart, and perhaps his own as well. Victor quietly stepped away, unwilling to break that moment. He returned to his study and sat down, his eyes unconsciously settling on the photograph of Amélie on his desk. The woman in the photo was smiling gently, her eyes full of love. "She would like her," Victor whispered, not knowing whether he was speaking to Amélie or to himself. In the days that followed, Victor began to change his schedule. He came home earlier. He joined Lily for dinner, even though at first he mostly sat in silence, listening to the two of them talk. He noticed that Elena did not try to impress him. She simply focused on Lily, on small details he had never paid attention to before. One morning, Victor came across Elena in the kitchen. She was wearing a simple apron, her hair loosely tied up, flipping pancakes in a pan while softly humming a wordless tune. The early sunlight streamed through the window, covering her in such a gentle glow that Victor stopped short. "You don't need to do this," Victor said, his voice slightly dry. "We have a chef." Elena turned and smiled faintly. "I know, but Lily likes pancakes in the morning." Victor fell silent. He watched Lily sitting on her high chair, her eyes lighting up when the plate was set in front of her. "You are very dedicated," Victor said, almost more an observation than a compliment. Elena paused for a moment, then nodded. "Because Lily deserves it." Those words stayed in Victor's mind for a long time. The fragile peace within the Moreau mansion did not last long. It began to crack on a rainy afternoon when a black luxury car stopped in front of the gates. The woman who stepped out was Sophia Moreau, Amélie's younger sister. Sophia appeared flawless, her hair perfectly curled, her expensive dress immaculate, her sharp eyes always hiding judgment. She had been a frequent visitor to the mansion during the first months after Amélie's death, but gradually appeared less often as Victor closed himself off emotionally. This time, Sophia returned with a different purpose. "Victor, I'm worried about you," Sophia said as she entered the living room, her eyes quickly sweeping over the space. "You've changed so much." Victor frowned. "Changed? You come home earlier, you travel less, even this house feels different," Sophia said, her lips curling with subtle implication. "Is it all because of the new nanny?" Victor did not answer immediately. He did not like the way Sophia emphasized the word nanny, as though it were something inferior. "Lily is better," he replied shortly. "That's what matters." Sophia smiled, but something cold flashed in her eyes. "I'm just afraid you trust people too easily." The words lingered in the air. In the days that followed, Sophia began appearing more frequently. She observed Elena from a distance, her gaze openly disdainful. When Elena greeted her politely, Sophia merely nodded indifferently, as if Elena's existence were unworthy of notice. Once, while Elena was cleaning the second-floor hallway, Sophia stood at the foot of the stairs and called up in a voice just loud enough to be heard. People like you usually know exactly what they need to do to stay in places like this." Elena paused, but did not respond. She lowered her head and continued working, telling herself not to take it to heart. She was far too familiar with looks like those. But Sophia was not finished. One evening, when Victor came home late, Sophia entered his study, her face filled with feigned concern. "Victor, I don't want to say this," she began, "but I think you should know." Victor looked up. "Know what?" "I saw Elena in your study this morning," Sophia said slowly. "She stood there for quite a while. I don't know what she was doing with the documents on your desk." Victor's heart tightened slightly. "She was bringing in coffee," he replied, though even he was not entirely certain. Sophia shook her head. "I don't think it was just coffee. Victor, you're too naive. You have a company, assets, and a child. People like her could take advantage of all that." Those words struck directly at Victor's deepest fear, the fear of being betrayed, of being hurt once again. That evening, Victor became unusually withdrawn. When Elena placed a cup of tea before him as usual, he did not look at her, only gave a cold nod. Elena sensed the change immediately, though she did not understand why. She only saw that Victor's eyes were no longer as warm as before. "Elena," Victor's voice rang out, cold and distant, "we need to talk." "Sophia says you were in my study this morning," he said bluntly. "Is that true?" Elena sprang to her feet. "Yes, but only to bring coffee. I do that every day." Victor stared at her. "Did you touch any documents?" "No," Elena replied immediately, her voice trembling. "I never did. I respect you. I respect your private space." Tears welled in her eyes, but Elena struggled to remain composed. "I would never do anything that could put you or Lily in danger." Victor remained silent for a long time. Too long. Sophia's words, old fears and unhealed wounds, all surged within him at once. "Elena," Victor said slowly, each word like a blade, "I can't take risks. Not with my daughter. Not with my company." Elena froze. What are you saying?" "I think it's best that you pack your things and leave," Victor said, "within the hour." Elena's world collapsed. "I'm being fired? For something I didn't do?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I need to protect my family," Victor replied, turning away. "I will talk to Lily." "No," Elena cried. "You don't understand. Lily will think I abandoned her. You know how afraid she is of that." Victor paused at the doorway, but did not turn back. "Prepare your things," he said, and walked out. Elena collapsed onto the bed, her sobs buried into the pillow. She packed mechanically. Every item she placed into the suitcase carried a memory, a drawing Lily had made, a hair tie Lily loved, a clumsily written note. When Elena came downstairs, Sophia was standing in the living room. A satisfied smile rested on her lips. "It's best that you never come back here," Sophia said coldly. Elena did not reply. She hurried toward the door, but at that moment hurried footsteps came from the stairs. "Elena!" Lily ran down, tears streaming, and threw her arms around her. "Where are you going? You promised you'd stay." Elena knelt down and held Lily tightly. "I'm sorry, my angel. Sometimes adults can't keep their promises." "No, don't go," Lily sobbed. Victor appeared on the steps. "Lily, come here," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "No," Lily screamed. "I don't want her to go." Elena kissed Lily gently on the forehead, tears falling freely. "I will always remember you," she whispered. She stood up and walked out the door. Every step felt as though it were tearing her heart apart. As Elena neared the gate, Lily's cry rang out, raw and unbearable. "Daddy! She's my family! Please don't let her go!" Elena paused for a moment, then continued walking. Elena Costa walked without knowing where she was going. The road ahead stretched endlessly, streetlights flickering on and casting blurred reflections across the rain-soaked pavement. The suitcase trailing behind her rattled in dry, steady sounds, like the fading heartbeat of her own exhausted chest. When the gates of the Moreau estate closed behind her, Elena understood that she had lost more than just a job. She had lost a home, lost a child who had called her family, and lost the last belief that living kindly was enough to make everything turn out right. Elena walked for a long time until her legs could no longer carry her. She stopped at a small roadside park and sat on a cold, damp wooden bench. She hugged her backpack tightly to her chest as if it were the only thing still holding her together. Night slowly fell. People hurried past, everyone with somewhere to go. No one noticed the young woman with reddened eyes trying to swallow her tears. "Why does everything always end like this?" Elena whispered, her voice breaking. "I only wanted to do the right thing." She thought of Lily, of the small hands clinging to her, of the sobbing voice pleading, "Don't go." The pain crushed Elena's chest, forcing her to bend forward, gasping for air. Her phone vibrated in her hand. A message appeared from Maya, an old friend who had once worked with her at a cafe years before. "Elena, how have you been lately? I heard you're working as a nanny?" Elena stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed each word slowly, as though every letter weighed heavily. "I'm not anymore. I was fired today." Maya's reply came almost immediately. "What? Why? Are you okay?" Elena hesitated. Pride had always made her grit her teeth and endure everything alone. But now she had nothing left to lose. "Do you know anywhere I could stay for a few days, just until I find a new job?" A moment later, her phone buzzed again. "Come to my place. I have a spare sofa. You can stay as long as you need." Elena closed her eyes. At last, her tears fell, not from despair, but from gratitude. She took a bus to Maya's small apartment in the suburbs. It was cramped and worn, but warmer than anywhere she had been in the past few hours. Maya opened the door without many questions, simply pulled Elena into a tight hug and handed her a bowl of hot soup. "You don't have to explain right now," Maya said gently. "Just know that you're not alone." That night, Elena lay on the sofa, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. She could not sleep. In her mind, one question repeated endlessly. Was Lily okay? And elsewhere in the city, inside the vast and cold mansion, a 5-year-old child was crying herself into exhaustion, unable to understand why the only person who had made her feel safe had disappeared. That night, the Moreau mansion was no longer quiet in its familiar way. This time, the silence was heavy and suffocating, as if every wall were forcing Victor Moreau to face himself. Lily refused to eat dinner. She locked her bedroom door and would not speak to anyone. The sound of her sobbing echoed from behind the door, leaving Victor frozen in the hallway. "I just want Elena," Lily cried. "I don't want anyone else." Victor closed his eyes. Each of his daughter's sobs felt like a hammer striking his chest. "Children will get used to it," Sophia said behind him indifferently. She leaned against the wall, holding a glass of wine. "They forget quickly." Victor turned to look at Sophia. For the first time, her words no longer brought him comfort, only a growing sense of unease. He went into his study and slammed the door shut. The familiar room suddenly felt foreign. Victor sat down and stared at the stack of documents on his desk, the ones Sophia had claimed Elena had been going through. He began to check. Every file, every stack of papers, every drawer. Nothing was disturbed. Everything was exactly where it should be. A chill ran down Victor's spine. If Elena had not touched anything, then what had Sophia seen? Victor turned on his computer and called internal security. "I need all the hallway and study camera footage from this morning," he said, his voice rough. "Immediately." The minutes of waiting felt endless. When the footage appeared on the screen, Victor's hands trembled slightly. He fast-forwarded to the time Sophia had mentioned. The images were clear. Elena entered the study carrying a tray of coffee. She carefully set the cup on the desk, glanced at the documents for a few seconds, just an unconscious look, then turned and left, gently closing the door behind her. Victor held his breath. He played the video further. A few minutes later, Sophia appeared on the screen. She looked around, walked straight to the desk, picked up several files, flipped through them quickly, then placed them back exactly where they had been. Before leaving, Sophia even smiled, a satisfied smile. Victor collapsed into his chair. The air seemed to drain from his lungs. Elena was innocent, and he had believed a lie. Victor covered his face with his hands, guilt crashing over him so violently it made him feel sick. He had driven away the only person who had brought peace to his daughter. He had hurt Lily, and he had repeated his old mistake, letting fear control every decision. He sprang to his feet and hurried into the living room. "Sophia," Victor said, his voice low and dangerous. "You lied." Sophia turned, her face briefly paling before she quickly regained her composure. "What are you talking about?" "I checked the cameras," Victor said slowly. "Elena didn't do anything. The person who entered my study after her was you." Silence stretched for several seconds. Then Victor understood. This was not just a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate betrayal. And in that moment, Victor Moreau knew if he did not find Elena and make this right, he would lose more than just a nanny. He would lose his family. 3 days had passed since Elena Costa left the Moreau mansion. 3 short days, but for Victor Moreau, they were the longest of his life. Lily barely spoke. She refused to go to school, would not eat, and cried herself to sleep every night from sheer exhaustion. Victor stood outside his daughter's bedroom for hours, listening to every broken sob echo from inside, a feeling of helplessness tearing through his chest. He knew he could not delay any longer. Victor asked his private lawyer to find Elena, not to threaten her or cover up his mistake, but to face it. When he learned that Elena was temporarily staying in a small apartment in the suburbs, he immediately ordered that she be contacted. The first call was cut off, so was the second. It was only after his lawyer sent her a direct message that Elena finally agreed to meet, on the condition that it be in a public place. A small cafe in the city center. Elena arrived early. She sat in a corner of the cafe, both hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea that had already gone cold. She wore no makeup, her hair neatly tied back, her face thinner than it had been a few days before. She looked tired, but her eyes held a frightening determination. When Victor walked in, Elena felt his presence immediately. He looked completely different. Dark circles were visible beneath his eyes. His once straight shoulders now sagged slightly. He approached the table, pausing for a few seconds as if gathering all his courage. "Thank you for coming," Victor said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't come for you," Elena replied without looking up. "I came for Lily. How is she?" Victor closed his eyes. "Not well. She misses you?" "Very much." Elena's chest tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Do you know where you were wrong?" Victor nodded. "I checked the cameras. I know you're innocent. Sophia lied." Elena looked up, pain flashing in her eyes. "Knowing that doesn't make it hurt any less." "I know," Victor said quickly. "I was wrong. I let fear control me. I failed to protect you." Elena gave a bitter smile. "You didn't just fail to protect me. You threw me out onto the street." Victor lowered his head. A man who once stood before hundreds of business partners now could not bring himself to meet the eyes of a young woman. "I don't expect your forgiveness," he said softly, his voice trembling. "But I'm asking you to come back, for Lily, and for me." Elena shook her head. Do you think it's that simple? That an apology is enough to erase being suspected like a thief? I'll make it up to you, Victor said urgently. Higher pay, a long-term contract, anything you want. It's not about money, Elena cut in, her voice cold. It's about respect. It's about trust. The things you took away from me. Victor fell silent. Then he said, slowly and sincerely, I need you. Lily needs you. That house is no longer a home without you. Elena lowered her gaze to her hands. Inside her, two emotions fought fiercely, the pain of betrayal and her love for an innocent child. I need time, she finally said. I'll give you my answer later. Victor nodded, not daring to pressure her. I'll wait. Elena stood up and walked out of the cafe without looking back. Victor remained there alone, understanding that this time the choice was no longer his to make. Elena Costa took 2 days to make her decision. 2 days passed in sleepless nights, in moments when she stared at her phone only to set it down again. The fear of being hurt once more clung to her like a shadow. But above all else was the image of Lily's tear-filled blue eyes, the child who had clung to her with her whole heart. On the morning of the 3rd day, Elena sent Victor a short message. I will come back, but I need to see Lily first. The reply came almost immediately. Thank you. I will wait. The car stopped in front of the gates of the Moreau estate. Elena remained seated for a few seconds, her hand resting on the door handle, her heart pounding. The feeling was painfully familiar, both like coming home and like stepping back into the place that had once broken her. Victor stood waiting on the front steps. When he saw Elena, clear relief lit his eyes. Lily is upstairs, he said carefully. She doesn't know you're here. Elena did not reply. She hurried inside, nearly running up the stairs. Her heart pulled her toward that familiar room more powerfully than any reason could. She knocked softly. I don't want to talk to anyone, Lily's weak voice came from inside. It's Elena, she said gently. A deadly moment of silence. Then the door flew open. Lily stood there clutching her old teddy bear, her eyes swollen red from too much crying. She stared at Elena as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then, like pure instinct, Lily threw herself into Elena's arms. Elena, you came back! Lily burst into tears, hugging her so tightly that Elena nearly lost her balance. Elena knelt down and held Lily close, her own tears finally spilling free. I'm sorry, my angel. I'm here now. Lily sobbed, her small hands gripping Elena's clothes as if afraid she would disappear again. After Lily fell asleep from exhaustion, Elena went to the living room. Victor stood there, tense like a man awaiting judgment. I will come back to work, Elena said plainly, but I have conditions. Victor nodded immediately. Anything. First, Elena said, her voice calm but firm. I want to be respected. I am not just a servant. I am a human being. Victor nodded. I promise. Second, Sophia will never set foot in this house again. Victor's eyes darkened. She has been banned. Permanently. Elena took a deep breath. Third, if there is ever another time you doubt me without evidence, I will leave. And that time, I will not come back. Victor met her gaze without flinching. I understand, and I accept. Elena nodded, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because this time she chose love, without losing herself. After Elena returned, the Moreau mansion was no longer the same. Not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because something new appeared within those walls. Sincerity. Victor no longer kept the rigid distance he once did. He began spending more time at home, having dinner with Lily, listening to her tell small stories from school, things he had always missed before. Elena noticed the change, not through words, but through very small actions. Victor no longer made decisions alone. He asked Elena's opinion about Lily, about daily routines, about the things that frightened his daughter, and more importantly, he listened. One late afternoon, after Lily had fallen asleep, Victor and Elena sat across from each other in the living room. Soft yellow light bathed the room, making the space feel unusually calm. "Elena," Victor began, his voice low and slow, "I want to talk about Amelie." Elena looked up but did not interrupt. "She died in a car accident," Victor continued. "It was raining heavily that day. I chose work over being with her, and when I got the call, everything was already over." He paused, his hands clenched until they turned pale. "I told myself that if I never let anyone close again, I would never have to hurt like that another time," Victor said. "But I was wrong. I let Lily suffer along with me." Elena gently placed her hand on the table, not touching him, but close enough for him to know she was there. "You can't change the past," she said softly, "but you can still change the present." Victor looked at her for a long time. In his eyes was no longer the coldness of a businessman, but the vulnerability of a man who had lost too much. From that evening on, their conversations grew longer. Victor spoke of a deprived childhood, of growing up too fast, of the pressure to always be strong. Elena spoke of cold rented rooms, of never belonging anywhere, of the fear of being left behind. With each shared story, another wall came down. One night, unable to sleep, Elena went out into the garden. The sky was full of stars, the night breeze cool. She sat on the familiar wooden bench, letting her mind drift. Victor appeared behind her. "Can't you sleep?" he asked. Elena nodded. "I tend to think a lot at night." Victor sat down beside her, keeping just enough distance. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was comfortable. "Elena," Victor said softly, as if afraid of breaking the moment, "I don't know if this is too soon, but I feel something between us." Elena's heart raced. She did not turn to look at him right away. "I feel it too," she admitted, "but I'm afraid." "So am I," Victor said. "Afraid of hurting you, afraid of hurting Lily. But most of all, I'm afraid of not giving myself a chance to be happy." Elena turned to him. The distance between them had never felt so small. When Victor leaned in, his kiss was very gentle, not hurried, not possessive. It was only a quiet promise that they would move slowly but sincerely. Elena did not pull away. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to believe one more time. A few weeks later, on a star-filled evening, Victor took Elena into the back garden, where they had once shared long, silent conversations. "Elena," he said, kneeling before her with a simple yet elegant ring in his hand, "you came into my life when I was lost. You healed my daughter, this home, and my heart. Will you build this family with me? Forever?" Elena did not need long to think. She cried, but they were tears of happiness. "I will." When Lily heard the news, she jumped up and threw her arms around Elena. "So, you'll really be my mom?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling. Elena knelt down and hugged Lily. "If you want me to be." "I always do," Lily said firmly. Their wedding was simple and warm, attended only by those who truly loved them. Maya stood beside Elena, her eyes red with tears, smiling as if she had never been more proud. When Elena walked down the aisle, Victor understood. The woman who had once been driven out of this house with an old suitcase had now become its heart. That evening the three of them lay on a blanket in the garden, gazing up at the starry sky. "Elena," Lily asked innocently, "can Mommy Amelie see us?" Elena looked at Victor. He nodded, smiling gently. "Your mommy can definitely see us," Elena replied, "and she is very happy." Victor wrapped his arms around the two most important people in his life. He had lost Emily, but life had given him a second chance. Not to forget the past, but to keep loving.